Hi, and welcome back to Bounce Forward with me, Tiff. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders, past and present. Now, today we're hitting up part 2 of my chat with Lyndi Cohen, the nude nutritionist, and there is so much to chat about, so let's get stuck straight into it. I've heard of you talk about different types of hunger, emotional hunger, mouth hunger. Can you explain these a little bit better for us?
Well, physical hunger is the one we're all familiar with, right? It's when we go, okay, there's a little pang in my stomach. But if you are a dieter, you might not even know what hunger feels like, because typically we eat in case of hunger. Because hunger has felt so scary to us, we've let ourselves get so hungry in the past, we can eat preemptively. We go, I don't want to get hungry, so I eat in case of hunger. And so I think it's about forming a healthier relationship with hunger as well. Ideally, you are going to be hungry before every single time you eat. You know, you're not just hopping to the bathroom and going, I'm just going to wing it and see if something comes out. You are waiting until you feel the urge to wee, to go to the toilet. And generally, we are waiting until we get tired before we go to sleep. So I want the same to be for hunger. You should be feeling hungry before every time you eat. So if we can start to develop that healthier relationship with hunger and comfortable fullness, it can help you eat to comfortable fullness and not overeat. If you're not letting yourself get comfortably hungry, then you might be someone who goes, I just can't stop eating once the food's there. It's just so delicious, and you overeat again and you get stuck in that all or nothing mindset. So that healthy relationship with physical hunger is important. Now, emotional hunger is a different thing. You might say to me, but Lyndi, I am eating chocolate. I am eating all the things. I'm binging on them all the time. They're constantly in my life. And if you are emotionally saying to yourself, I shouldn't have done that. I really screwed up. That was way too many calories. That was naughty. That was bad. I'm really going to have to be good tomorrow. This is emotional restriction, and it causes emotional hunger. And that emotional hunger is what drives us to have these intense, constant cravings. Cravings are normal, right? We all have cravings. But if it feels constant, if you don't see any variance in it, and it feels very powerful, then I think there is a large degree of emotional restriction probably going on for you. And while you have emotional restriction, it's near impossible. No, it is impossible to turn off this starvation switch. So your body remains thinking that you're in this famine state, which means you have that increased hunger, slow metabolism, and all the stuff we talked about. So helping to eliminate the diet voice inside your brain says, I shouldn't be doing this, and having the right retorts to come back at it so that it can start to rewire. Your brain will rewire. You'll start to think differently about food so it doesn't feel so exhausting. I think it's the way to go. I will just say as well, I think diets are very easy to start. They get very hard to maintain. What I talk about is the opposite. The hardest bit is getting started. You're learning how to think differently about food, learning about your hunger. Oh my goodness, it can feel like a lot. But the longer you do this, the easier, the more intuitive, the more relaxed you become. And that is what makes it sustainable over the long term.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And emotional restriction, I'd never thought of it in terms like that. And even I've had moments in my life where I come from a sport that is weight divisions, and we would have to diet for weight divisions, and getting out of that mindset and still sometimes thinking, I shouldn't have that food. There are good and bad foods, and it is something that is exhausting and fatiguing, and it's just not a happy life, is it?
Yeah, so and it leads to binge eating, and I want people to know that binge eating is a very normal, natural response to when your body fears that food is not plentiful. It is so normal and so incredibly common. And some people like me have binge eating disorder. In fact, I had extreme binge eating disorder. And some of us just binge occasionally when we notice that restriction gets a little bit more intense. And irrespective of if you're having any binges, what I'm teaching you is going to be able to reduce the binges so that they don't happen anymore.
Yes, and that feeling, that starving, stuffing cycle, and that feeling that food will never be there, like chocolate. And then I saw a fantastic tip on your Instagram where you said, buy 3 packets of chocolate and just have it there. It's not going to run out. Like, you can have a little bit and, you don't have to eat the whole block.
Well, this is called the 3-packet principle, because what we do as a dieter, we go, I'm just going to finish the pack so it's not a temptation and I'll start fresh tomorrow. This is so the common thinking trap of the all or nothing dieter. So the 3-packet principle gets in the way of that, because even if I finish this packet, I have 2 more packets. And even if I finish the next packet, there's another packet. And you have to commit to this process, and you keep having to rebuy. But with time, you will stop being as obsessed with food. I talk about this in my book. There is a study called the macaroni and cheese study. What they did is they gave participants macaroni and cheese. Delicious. Yum. I love mac and cheese. And they said, eat as much as you want. And what do you know? As the days went on, the participants ate less and less. At the beginning, they gorged themselves. And then at the end, they're like, oh, you know what? I know mac and cheese is always available to me. I can eat it whenever I want. This is what I want you to do with every single food you feel a little bit crazy about. Like the example of eating peanut butter in a restaurant. By giving yourself permission to it, you think, I'm just going to, if I give myself permission to eat whatever I want, I'm not going to be able to stop. I'm going to gain so much weight. And this is the fear, the thing that stops us from doing this. But in fact, the exact opposite happens. We start to go, oh, mac and cheese, it's just another food. Anytime I want mac and cheese, I can have it. And this is a phrase I really want you to use. Anytime I want this food, I can have it. And you have to truly mean it. If there is emotional restriction going on, it's going to sabotage this thinking. But that full permission allows your body to go, oh, okay, I know it's in the fridge. I'm now the person who can have Nutella, Biscoff, chocolate. I can have all foods in my house. Whereas before they used to all get destroyed and gone.
Yeah.
And binge eating is one of those things, if you don't get support, if you don't take action, it gets worse with time. It gets worse.
Okay.
And so that's how I got to the point that I was binge eating multiple times a day. So you can't diet yourself out of it.
Lastly, I want to pick your brain a little bit about weight loss, because, there's this big push I've seen on social media lately in trainers and influencers saying, look, you have to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight, which is true. So what are your feelings about tracking foods and tracking apps? Are they harmful? How do you suggest people approach if they do want to lose a little bit of weight, like knowing their food intake? How do you do that?
Yes. So, I've lost a bunch of weight twice. One was once I recovered from binge eating disorder. I was now much heavier. And over a very long period of time, I lost 20 kilograms. So I got back to a weight that I was going, okay, this is comfortable.
Fantastic.
And then recently I had my kids, and with each of my kids, I gained about 12 kilograms. And over the year that followed afterwards, I've now just been chipping away. Yes. And, I think the non-diet world can be so anti-weight loss or any talk about weight loss that we totally ignore the elephant in the room, which is that if we don't talk about healthy ways to achieve long-term sustainable weight loss, people just run back to diets and extreme approaches. I'm against extreme approaches on either ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
Now, what I think is we kind of need to trick ourselves into losing weight. I think so people create this goal weight, and I'm very much against the idea of tracking our calories and tracking our weight. I think it is near impossible to do those activities without becoming preoccupied with them and wanting to do it daily, and then, then lying in bed at night doing the arithmetic of what we ate that day or Fitness Pal kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't think that is the way to do it. I think instead of the goal weight, we need to determine a goal lifestyle. And what is the lifestyle that you want to lead? Okay, create a Pinterest board of that lifestyle. What are you doing? What places are you going? What are you eating? Kind of imagine it, and don't get sucked into the wellness girly Instagram trap of, the perfect days on the plate. That's not what I'm talking about. But we're going to start to take little actions to get you closer to that lifestyle, the goal lifestyle that you want. And the beauty of this is it means that it should all be sustainable. It should be doable. I want you to make little habit tweaks bit by bit. Instead of focusing on what you're not allowed to have, I'm all about crowding. Crowding is the act of adding, not restricting. So eat more vegetables, eat more fruit. I think, the fear mongering we've had around carbohydrates, around fruit, means that we go, oh, I'm not allowed to eat carbohydrates for lunch. And then we faceplant into the pantry and we eat all the chocolate. But what if you ate a sandwich for lunch and that was really satisfying and you actually finished, you felt full and you felt emotionally satisfied? I think, like I talked about, those sacrificial calories, you're probably going to eat less and not go crazy around food at nighttime. What if you integrated some chocolate into your afternoon snack and then we build it out with a handful of fruit, a handful of nuts, you pop it on a plate, because binge eating doesn't happen on a plate. It always happens like a squirrel in the pantry. So you pop it on a plate And then you're going to find that, all right, maybe I skipped a binge. Okay. And if you, as I said, you add in 200 calories, you save 2,000. Many people who stop binge eating, who break free of the all or nothing mindset, naturally do go on to lose weight, but you're not going to lose weight by continuing to do that restrictive dieting. And I'd say to anyone who goes, well, the calorie counting thing does work. I'd say, well, if it worked, wouldn't you be at your goal weight by now? If it truly worked, you'd be maintaining that weight. And only a very small number of people can actually maintain that weight. I would argue for many people it is through obsessive and sheer just like grit. And what I'm interested in is to help you be healthy, but not sacrifice 95% of your life to weigh 5% less. So it's also this idea of finding a weight that is comfy for you. And you might not be your leanest self, but your life is good. Your thoughts don't keep coming back to food. You're not obsessed with how many reps you did at the gym. Health is something that makes your life better, not something that gets in the way of you living your best life. That's what I'm interested in. And I think over time, I help people find their happy weight, which is probably not the weight you weighed in high school. And it's probably not your weight on your wedding day. But it is a weight that you feel comfy at, and where your weight is a non-issue. It's not something you have to think about. That is my goal and what I help people do.
That's a fantastic goal. So lastly, I just want to ask you about alcohol. I don't drink myself, so it's hard for me to relate to this, but what is the connection between alcohol and weight loss? And, are people drinking too much, and is that something that they should assess?
Absolutely, people are drinking way too much. I used to have chronic anxiety, and then I stopped drinking. And then I had no anxiety. And I just wish someone had told me that will transform your life. This seemingly small change will have this massive impact on you.
So you don't drink at all, Lyndi?
Not anymore. No, I had my kids and I realized I had my anxiety, poof, it disappeared when I was pregnant. And I was wondering, is it hormonal or is it just the only time in my life where I've gone an extended period of time and not drunk alcohol? So I had to do the experiment. So I've been doing like a booze break now for it's a year and a half almost. No, longer, two years now.
Wow, good on you.
I love it. Now, when it comes to weight, we talk about alcohol being empty calories, but I also think that don't quit alcohol to lose weight. I don't think that is the right reason to do it. Reduce alcohol because you like how it makes you feel, because you like waking up with energy, because you're going to trade a handful of tipsy moments for feel-good high that honestly it doesn't wear off. Now that I don't drink, I go, why would I trade how good I feel for a drink, for a little moment,
that's
a
how
little
I feel.
tipsy feeling? It's just that little blip is not worth how good I feel. And then just become curious about going, okay, well, these people feel pretty smug about their alcohol-free life. Maybe there's something in it. And if you've never done a stint in your adult life where you haven't drunk alcohol, just give it a whirl. Just give it a whirl. Become curious. If you did a little booze break, how good you could feel, because I think you could feel bloody fantastic.
Oh, that's such good advice. Well, Lyndi, I just want to ask you one more question. I know I've been saying one more question, but I love talking to you. And this question is around Ozempic and everything that's going on with Ozempic. What are your thoughts on it?
I think Ozempic is incredibly interesting at the moment. I think Ozempic can change lives. One of my issues is I don't think we know the long-term impacts of Ozempic. So it kind of feels to me like this grand social experiment that's happening at the moment. I know we have doctors who really struggle with weight stigma, who are going to totally miss the fact that the majority of people who they are putting on Ozempic have underlying eating disorders. You put them on Ozempic, and then at some point they're going to have to come off Ozempic, and all those eating disorder symptoms are still going to be there untreated. And what do we think is going to happen? What we see from the research is that the weight rebound is just equivalent to any other methods we've seen before. So it's the lack of long-term planning that really blows my mind. So if you are someone who is on Ozempic, I would highly encourage you to get support for what may be an underlying binge eating disorder, which is the most common eating disorder by a landslide, and it is so underdiagnosed and misunderstood by doctors. So they're not picking it up, and you're not getting that adequate emotional support that you need. I will also say that one of the challenges is when someone's on Ozempic, food noise disappears. So that feeling disordered around food also disappears, and therefore the motivation to recover can also disappear as well. So that is a bit of an interesting thing to consider. But if you are going to come off Ozempic, I think there needs to be this long-term strategy of, okay, what are we going to do to create a healthier relationship with food where we're no longer getting that rebound we were seeing before?
Oh, I'm so glad I asked that question. That was a great answer.
One more thing I want to add as well, I think it's a little bit scary we're seeing from the research, because Ozempic slows gastric emptying. What we're seeing is huge malabsorption issues where, let's take calcium, for example. Let's say you're a woman who's our age, your 30s, your 40s, you're breastfeeding, well, maybe not breastfeeding because on Ozempic, but calcium is an incredibly important nutrient. And it's probably not getting properly absorbed while you're on Ozempic. And then you get to become a 60-year-old woman who did not get adequate calcium needs, and the bone density impacts can be quite severe. And I don't think we're talking about bone density because we can't see it, we can't feel it until it's too late. We're not taking this into consideration. So I'm very concerned about the mass macro and micronutrient deficiencies that can emerge from taking Ozempic, especially when it's not done correctly.
Thank you, Lyndi. Thank you so much for coming on Bounce Forward and for all of your tips and all of your advice. It's just fantastic and transformative.
Oh, such a pleasure. Thank you, Tiff.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Bounce Forward. I love having your company, so please DM me on Instagram at tiffhall_xo. Let me know any questions you'd love me to cover. Don't forget to rate and review me on your podcast app. Speak soon. Happy days.